Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex. Lord, pretty much every segment over the last several weeks has covered football. We haven't talked too much Braves free agency, and there hasn't been a ton of news outside of a few cost-cutting moves, but we did get something over the weekend about the Braves being interested in shortstop Willy Adames. Now, we've talked a lot of Willy Adames even since dating back to the trade deadline. This is a guy that's been on the Atlanta Braves radar, but he's on every radar for a team that needs a shortstop because he's really the only healthy option available that's a starting caliber shortstop. Obviously, when you're looking at the long-term future of the Atlanta Braves, the one area that you can point at is shortstop and Orlando Arcia. Like, that has to be fixed. But whether they can fix it this offseason, it's going to take them getting in an uncomfortable position with their pocketbook because it's going to be a 5-6 year deal, maybe even 7 years, and it's going to be north of $150 million.
Yeah, and that would more than double the largest free agent contract that Anthopoulos has ever handed out. That was that 4-year deal that he gave to Ozuna. More than double, considerably. And I think for several reasons, I did just write something about Ken Rosenthal kind of heeding a warning. Just kind of pointing out the obvious that any deal for a shortstop since I think he went back to 2011 that was north of $150 million more often than not has not worked out. And there's only a couple of exceptions. One being Francisco Alvarez for the Mets.
Lindor.
Alvarez.
I love to see him play shortstop.
But most of them, he even named Dansby Swanson, who's been, again, reliable defensively, but pretty average with the stick. But again, that was pretty much who he's been for most of his career outside of that free agent year that he had with the Braves that last year. So, it is kind of, in my mind, you're going to get into a bidding war with not only, a few clubs that need a shortstop, but clubs who are interested in maybe moving him off of shortstop to third base. For a deal it's going to be north of $150 million if that many clubs are interested. To me, you might just be better off with Orlando Arcia at that $2 million price point and using those funds elsewhere because, yes, Orlando Arcia has been a thorn in mine, yours, everybody's side since that 2023 NLDS. It's not just the on-field struggles. It's the antics and all crap like that. But it's compounded when he's struggling on the field. But we've been asking the guy, particularly last year, to do something that was unreasonable to ask. We signed him to that deal. He's a backup. He's a super utility piece. And with all the injuries, we needed him to be more, which was unfair to ask. If everybody's healthy last year, which we should go into 2025 expecting that, or at least the vast majority of those who are injured not to be, You're expecting Orlando Arcia to hit around 15 home runs, play pretty good defense, and just be at the bottom of the lineup. And that's a good price point for that guy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want to sit here and act like Orlando Arcia isn't a huge problem because he is. He's a terrible player that doesn't belong in any lineup with World Series aspirations. Like, I don't want to sit here and act like he does anything well. He's barely above an average glove.
Hopefully his defense.
It's a declining,
positively regressive.
It's not something, but that's not something that with age you usually get better at. And listen, I just don't want to sit here and act like I'm with you there. Like, there's a certain point where it's like I'm not here.
There's not good options out there.
I'm not sitting here saying $150+ million for Willy Adames is the answer. I frankly, I don't think it is the answer because I mean, like, Adames is a good player
and he's aged. His defense regressed last year and he is aging. So he's going to eventually have to move off of shortstop.
Yeah. I listen, if you weren't willing to go there with Dansby Swanson, I have a hard time believing you're willing to go there with Willy Adames. The only reason I think you do that is if you're desperate, right? And the Braves might find themselves as desperate because I want to go back to the fact that Orlando Arcia should not be starting on any team with World Series aspirations. Like, he is a black hole in the lineup. He is a replacement level player at best. Like, $2 million, maybe you have to roll with them. I understand, especially if the only other option is Willy Adames.
Just are kind of forcing your hand.
But
in my opinion.
Like, I do want to say that, as I said to start this thing, the biggest hole that the Braves have to fix in regards to the long-term standing of this organization is replacing their shortstop position. And listen, it's not, unless you think Nacho Alvarez is the guy, maybe he is the guy, it's not in the organization. Like, so eventually the Braves are either going to have to go into their prospect pool and say, hey, we need all this for a shortstop, which obviously is going to be very expensive in terms of prospects, or they're going to have to hand one of these top guys, a large free agent contract, because that's just it. Like, you either bring him up homegrown, they don't have one unless you think Nacho Alvarez is the guy. You trade a bunch of prospects for one and then extend them, a lot of money, a lot of prospects, or you go out in free agency and sign one. So the options like that are not changing, right? If you're going to get a shortstop of Willy Adames' caliber, you're going to have to pay $150+ million. That's just the market.
Yeah, I think, from where I sit, is if the rest of the lineup is good enough, you can survive with Orlando Arcia. And no, not only survive, you can win a World Series with Orlando Arcia as your shortstop, so long as what happened last year doesn't happen again. And knock on wood, not going to make Roscoe bark here. That's very unlikely of what all the injuries that happened with all of the actual on-field regressions from those who didn't get injured. It is very unlikely to all happen again. So if you can improve left field, which was a complete black hole, you get some sort of starting caliber outfielder, whether it's, in place of Ronald or in place of Jared Kelenic, whatever it is, some combination of the two. Michael Harris is back for a full season. Matt Olson decides to, recreate 2022 and not 2023, or 2023 and not 2024. And you get all of it. Austin Riley's back. Odd number year for Ozzie Albies. He's going to be an all-star. That's what that means. So, I think there's a wiser use of the funds. Now, thinking long-term, you'd be asinine to think that it's not the biggest problem on the Braves. But for a team that has everything else, kind of every other box is kind of checked other than the proverbial starting pitcher, you feel pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think they're listen.
Braves, it's obviously the weakest point.
Every single season, the way the Braves are constructed, they're going to go in there. Fangraphs is going to have them projected as the number one team. Everyone's going to have them power ranked in the top 3. Like, every single, that's the nature of this core, right? But you're trying to get better. And in this situation, we do have some other opportunities to get better because you don't know about Kelenic. You don't know about Ronald Acuña's health. Spencer Strider's health is obviously a question mark, and you're losing Max Fried. So there are some other areas where you can upgrade. But the long-term answer and the most difficult problem for this organization is going to be shortstop, because there's only so many guys.
That is also the point, that it's so difficult that it wowould just be easier to try and make up that production in another area of whether it's left field, pouring money into left field.
The thing is, you just can't, like, Orlando, this stopgap thing we've been doing for Orlando Arcia can only go for so long.
Mercenary shortstop for the next decade.
Yeah, can only go on for so long. Like, eventually you're going to have to address the situation with what I said, money or prospects, because you don't have one coming up to the organization. There could be a Ken every
single year. A little guy that just needs a one-year deal. Come on to the Atlanta Braves, rebuild your free agent
value. The real prayer here is that somehow Nacho Alvarez turns into this stud shortstop, and he's the guy that you can turn to. Obviously, he didn't prove that last year, but this was a guy we were high on coming into the season. Had a very good season in AAA and AA. So
a small stint like that shouldn't cool anybody.
I'm not going to give up on him, but it doesn't change the fact that there's a long-term problem here at shortstop, and yes, you can put a Band-Aid over it, which is Orlando Arcia this year. But eventually, especially if Nacho Alvarez proves not to be that guy, which is more likely than not.
Let me pose this: given all of the long-term contracts, there is virtually no flexibility in the Braves lineup. Virtually. Now, there is obviously some wiggle room. Marcell Ozuna is coming off the books. Left field's obviously a blank canvas. We don't know about right field. But do you maybe prefer that flexibility at shortstop, whether it be, a stopgap option, or, you're going to lock every single position into a long-term deal? Is that ideal? I don't even know if it's ideal.
Well, I don't think it was ideal. I don't think it's ideal. I don't know. It's hard to say, because at the end of the day,
playing well, it's awesome.
At the end of the day, you have to do something at shortstop. It has to be done. And those guys are going to get these years. Even guys that you're like, Willy Adames, is he worth $150 million? That's very expensive, especially once he gets on the wrong side of 30. Is he even going to be able to play shortstop? Like, there's going to be questions about all these guys. There's a reason when we saw Dansby Swanson hit free agency, $177 million. million, more than Freddie Freeman. Was anybody sitting here saying Freddie Freeman is not as good of a player as Dansby Swanson? No one's ever said that in life. You're talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer and a fringe all-star on his best season. Like they're not even close to comparable players, but the market's the market, right?
Gotta pay a premium for
it.
No
So
doubt.
it's a premium position that you hope you can take care of homegrown.
Yeah.
And we had that for Dansby Swanson for a while, but now you don't. And now it's an issue. And yes, they don't have to fix it this year, but eventually it's going to have to be addressed.